DANIELLE MCLAUGHLIN Last updated 0500, October 29, 2017. President John F. Kennedy, First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy, and Texas Governor John Connally travel through the streets of Dallas, November 22, 1963, moments before Kennedy's assassination. Opinion. Thursday morning dawned clear and bright over Dallas, Texas. By mid-afternoon it was nearly 30 degrees, unseasonably hot for late October. Dealey Plaza, just west of downtown, is a series of grassy expanses framed by a tulip-shaped pattern of streets that slope gently downward, convening in a triple underpass. On the plaza's eastern edge and highest point, a reflecting pool presides over the patchwork of grass and roadways. The pool runs north-south along Houston Street, guiding visitors' eyes up to the 6th floor of a building formerly known as the Texas School Book Depository and to the window from which Lee Harvey Oswald shot President John F. Kennedy on November 22, 1963, as the president's limousine passed below. Lee Harvey Oswald is held following the shooting of President John F. Kennedy. Oswald was fatally shot while in custody 2 days after Kennedy's assassination. On Thursday, the United States National Archives was scheduled to release all of the remaining files on the Kennedy assassination. It was required by a 1992 law, passed under President George H. W. Bush, ordering the federal government to make the files available to the public, nearly 54 years after Kennedy's death. Some 300 files comprising thousands of pages. They contain, among other things, information about Oswald's trip to Mexico just weeks before the assassination, where he allegedly met with KGB and Cuban spies. Read more. FBI tipped off to Oswald shooting wildest JFK assassination files. Newspaper got call 25 meters before assassination. JFK documents show mad tip dash after killing Trump to hold back some documents for review. And Thursday evening, Friday NZ time, the Trump administration released 2,800 documents and delayed the release of the rest for 180 days, citing the need to redact information that could harm national security and reveal the identities of spies and informants, foreign and domestic. New documents about the assassination of U.S. President John F. Kennedy were released this week. As the long shadows of the autumn cloaked the Dealey Plaza reflecting pool in shade, I asked Americans visiting the site about their recollections of the day Kennedy was killed. Almost everyone, including those who were very young in 1963, had memories of the day. One woman from Washington State, about 8 at the time, remembered her teachers crying. It jarred her. She overheard some chatter between them about Kennedy, but was sent home as were most school children that day so that her parents would deliver the terrible news. DANIELLE MCLAUGHLIN, a great but necessarily imperfect man. The violence of Kennedy's untimely death and the decades that have passed have washed away many of his flaws. Her husband, just 3 years old in 1963, recalled watching a black-and-white television carrying wall-to-wall coverage of the assassination. He remembered adults all visibly upset. He cried, too. A woman from Maryland remembered living in a row house in 1963, and at age 3, having a picture in her mind's eye of all of the housewives in the surrounding houses running out into the street, tears streaming down their faces. Her husband remembered being sent home early from school. He was shocked to get to the house and find his mother, who worked home in the middle of the day, there to deliver the news to him. He quipped that his mother married his stepfather on the same date some years later, and that it was how he remembered their wedding anniversary, not the other way around. Kennedy was a great but necessarily imperfect man, and the violence of his untimely death and the decades that have passed have washed away many of his flaws. This year, a survey of presidential historians ranked Kennedy the 8th greatest. The American public is kinder. In 2013, 50 years after his death, Americans ranked him as best president since Dwight Eisenhower. During his term in office, Kennedy's job approval averaged just over 70%, the highest average since these polls began in the late 1930s. Today, he is remembered as the King of Camelot, with a stylish wife, 2 beautiful children, and a large Irish Catholic extended family whose lives were largely committed to public service, and whose summers revolved around an oceanside family compound in Hyannisport, Massachusetts. He is remembered, too, as a Pulitzer Prize winner, a founder of the Peace Corps, and an orator who presented a new American vision of service, obligation, leadership, and the possibilities for American greatness. The last minute delay in the release of the entire Kennedy archive will contribute to the questions swirling around his death, elevated in no small part by Oliver Stone's JFK, released in 1991. Public figures who trade in conspiracy, like InfoWars' Alex Jones and Trump associate Roger Stone, will find a way to further stoke anti-government fervor by pointing to information released that potentially places responsibility for JFK's murder at the feet of the government, and to mysterious and unsatisfying redactions in material later released. Yesterday, on Q, Stone suggested it was the nefarious deep state holding back the documents from public consumption. This chatter will contribute to the already vast amount of political back and forth Americans now consume in the age of Trump, the flotsam we struggle to swim in on a daily basis. And it may leave many pining for a time when we knew less about the ugly insides of government, when politics and media was less divided, and when a president, boyish and hopeful, committed Americans to the pursuit of human rights, considered conversations with enemies as well as allies, a halt to the nuclear arms race, and a collective commitment to liberty for all. Sunday Star Times.